Welcome everyone. We will begin very soon in 2 or 3 minutes. Thanks.
Catalyst 2030 started life as a WhatsApp group among social entrepreneurs, connecting to envision real transformational change. Launched at the World Economic Forum in January 2020, it's grown into a global movement accelerating change to ensure the SDGs are reached by 2030. Fueled by passion, our 550 members working in 175 countries have collectively put in an amazing 50,000 volunteer hours, touching the lives of 2 billion people. And we're driven by values, to which we hold ourselves accountable. 2020 was a busy year, co-creating 3 reports with partners and producing one of our own. Inviting high-level guests to participate in the Catalyzing Change campaign, hosting fireside chats and expert hours, which will be continuing in 2021. To celebrate our achievements, together we placed our supporters in the limelight with the first Catalyst 2030 Awards for Systemic Change. With the blessing of the Dalai Lama, we celebrated finalists and winners in the following categories: special recognition for our early supporters, individual philanthropists, donor organizations, philanthropic intermediaries, corporate organizations, bi- and multilateral organizations, and 4 regional winners in the category of national governments. And now on to Catalyzing Change Week 2021. During this social entrepreneur-led event, we bring together diverse stakeholders in over 100 sessions to showcase their systems change efforts and the best practices that can accelerate our work in pursuit of the SDGs.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session, Learning for Sustainability. This is a great pleasure to host this session with Carlos. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are on the planet. It's a very small world, and I think we can all contribute to this world and to its future. This is what we are trying to do with the Learning Planet initiative that we have created with UNESCO, and that has had several hundred members now. It's about creating a radical collaboration on a very large scale. We are inspired by open source movements where everyone is free to collaborate, to share, to build upon the shoulders of the giants with others. And this is something that we need for the world of today and for building a better tomorrow. We know the complexity of the challenges. We need to radically change the way we cooperate. And Learning Planet is trying to contribute by providing a space where the different people, whether they are change makers, researchers, learners, organizations, they can try to bring what they have so that collectively we can build something which is working on a different scale. So we have different programs, but the one that we are launching this week with Catalyst 2030, and we are very excited about, is this notion of circles. What is a circle? It's a very simple idea. It's a place where everyone is free to enter and get inspired and get introduced to other people, so that we can see where the forces and maybe find different partners and different ideas, and so that together again we can try to achieve something which is bigger than what we could do on our own organization and our own settings. So this is the spirit of the Learning Planet circles, and this one is particularly important to me and to the team and to everyone here. I think learning for sustainability, that's one of the biggest challenge that we have, how we can re-engineer education and learning as fast as we can on the different pieces of the globe, so that collectively we can try to get a better crack at the SDGs, and we can better crack at solving our problems and reconcile with ourselves, others, and the planet. So it's very, very special for me to have you, all of you, here today. The Learning Planet Circle is coming directly, I would say, from an initiative that has been launched by the Club of Rome, which is called the Planetary Emergency Group. That is what's been very inspiring to us. And so we are trying here to use that model and adapt it to the needs of having a free conversation between people that are interested on this topic. And so I would like to introduce Carlos. If you could join me in introduce this session, I would be very happy to hear what Club of Rome are saying. Querido Carlos, the floor is yours.
Thank you, merci, Gael. Hello, everybody. Welcome to people from all around the world at very different times. So let me share with you what are the ideas behind this creation, the creation of this circle, which above anything else is an invitation to a journey of exploration. And why do we say this? 3 years ago, the Club of Rome adopted a lemma, which is emergence from emergency. I think it was appropriate 3 years ago, and now nobody questions the part of the emergency, because, you know, we live, it's so obvious. I think it was obvious even at that time and much before, that we were living in a situation with a multiplicity of emergencies. And by the way, that most of the people in the world have been living in situations of emergencies for all their lives, you know. But of course, the pandemic made the emergency, the global, and with its global character, as much more evident. Now, this circle of learning for sustainability is about the emergence, the part of that second part of, which is in the end the main part, is what new can emerge out of the situations in which we are. And it puts a focus on the fact that we don't know yet. This is not about following some recipes designed by enlightened people somewhere, by an enlightened elite who is able to find out what is the way forward, as much as we, maybe many of us would like to have this planning, you know, this recipe to get to desirable futures in 10 easy steps. It doesn't work that way, because living beings, living systems, ecosystems, societies don't change that way because somebody tells them how to change. So it is really in the order of creating something new, which has to emerge in many different places at the same time, from the work of many people, in ways which are not scripted. And then if they are not scripted, it's essential that we work and co-create and walk. I would say walk together. This is why I say journey of exploration. And let's forget and let's recognize we are, to a very large extent, lost. You know, the metaphor I use for this, I know that we would like, all of us would like to have a map of the future, a roadmap, you know, a very clear one. Well, I think the metaphor is as if I was preparing, I am based in Madrid, if I was preparing a trip to Cairo, and I know in advance that I'm going to Cairo, so I pile up documentation about the city, a map of the city. I read the number of documents. Of course, I'm going on a touristic trip there, so I would read about the Egyptian museum, the pyramids, and so on. And I get to sleep in the trip to Cairo, and by a twist of magic, I awake in the middle of a jungle, which doesn't look like what I expected Cairo to be. So one option is that I take my map of Cairo and I try to use it as a map of the jungle, which of course sounds absurd, but this is pretty much what we are trying to do right now. I think we are at a threshold. Humanity is at a critical point, and from this critical point, we have to emerge into a desirable futures actually in plural, futures in which well-being, human well-being is for everybody. It's equitable human well-being, but it's at the same time in balance within a healthy biosphere. And to be honest, we don't know how to do that. So I think it's worse to be lost and pretend having a map, with my map of Cairo going around in the jungle, than throwing the map to a bin and say, let's ask two people who are here and let's walk together and let's find out how we can emerge into something else. And this is the purpose of this circle. I will only add a few keys which I think are important from the perspective of the Club of Rome. How is this learning going? Or how do we think it could work? Definitely by enabling all people of all backgrounds, ages, and conditions to feel that they are able to learn and act by themselves. This is not about teaching anybody anything. It's about learning together, finding out together recipes to better futures. And it's about using all sources of knowledge. All threads of knowledge might be useful for this journey, as much ancient wisdom, as much a plurality of worldviews. This is very much about getting out of the paradigm of modernity under Western hegemony, but using a plurality of worldviews and ancient wisdom and indigenous knowledge and traditional ecological knowledge as much as modern science to make this journey together. And it's about asking new questions, because as I said, we don't know how to achieve this balance of human well-being within the healthy biosphere. And this has to be contextual, because life is contextual, life is local, life is very different, looks very different in every place in the world. So to a very large extent, the journey has to be community-based, locally based, and useful for the people who live in real places, in the ground, not in abstract places, thousands of kilometers from the ground. So this is an invitation to all of you who attend here today, and many thanks again for that, an invitation to a journey of exploration from a culture of separation and competition to a culture of relationships and collaboration and co-creation. And hopefully we will do this journey warm together. We will get into our blind spots and we will emerge into something new and better. Many thanks.
Well, thank you, Carlos. Thank you very much. So here are the rules of the house. This is a place, or this is a place and a time where we can discover very interesting stories. We have selected 5 inspiring talks today. This is an opportunity for all of us to learn from what's happening on the ground on the different corners of the planet. This is an opportunity for us to bring those stories and try to inject them in the educational system everywhere, so that we can try together to change, to move the needle so that it will enter in the 21st century. And this is an opportunity for us to connect and try to get stronger together and do projects together. So the chat is yours. You can discuss, ask your questions, comment on everyone else. We are unfortunately too big an audience to get direct questions, but we will select and try to answer all of them, or at least as much as we can. So please use the chat. And now it's my very personal pleasure to introduce Luis. It's the dear friend doing a fantastic work in Colombia. Luis, por favor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Gail, and thank you, Carlos. I'm excited to be in this Learning for Sustainability circle. And listening, Carlos, to your words, one thing stands out to me, and it's the concept of relations. And I think learning for sustainability requires us to shift the way we're actually relating. Because if you look at our planetary issues, I believe, they're really grounded on dysfunctional relations. And as we have dysfunctional relations with ourselves, with others, and with nature, we lost alignment, of living in harmony. And I think this is the largest challenge of learning for sustainability right now. So my large question is, the biggest break is with our relationship with nature. So how can we reestablish that relationship and start coming to what some of the ancestral communities used to call coming into right relation? So I think learning for sustainability is looking for pathways that allow us to really move forward to coming into right relations with nature, with others, and with ourselves. And it really doesn't matter where you start, as long as you maintain those 3 levels of relations. In the work we have been doing in Colombia, we have been focusing on this idea and how this idea of reestablishing the relations can activate what we are calling our regenerative capacity. So as we activate these or synchronize, harmonize these relationships, we're able to acknowledge our sense of interbeing, the capacity for us to feel that we are nature and understand we are nature in one side. On the other side, to understand that as a community of human beings, we're as similar to any other community in the living system. So we need to live as, a species community. And the other thing is that cultural and biological diversity are key factors in the capacity for the system to thrive. If you look at a healthy forest, an ancestral forest, what really comes out is the spirit of collaboration. All species are in right relation. And the other thing is the large amount of diversity that's involved. So diversity and difference actually can be aligned to work towards thriving. And I think this is another one of those concepts that we're working with. We focus our work on nature-based education and nature-based education as a pathway to moving towards those regenerative cultures, especially because we realize that the rupture of the relationship between humans and nature has a grounded force in the way we have been developing. So we have been separated in the cities. Latin America, for example, is over 80% urbanized. And this is incredible for a place that is so biodiversity rich, let's say. So we've been separated, and that separation starts generating the idea or the sense that we're actually not part of nature. So in order to start reconnecting, we need to move towards bringing nature back into the classrooms, back into education, and we need to bring education into nature. So those 2 concepts are really what surround nature-based education for us. And in this process, there's 3 levels that we really focus on achieving. The first one is, how do we reestablish deep connections with nature, deeply reconnect? And we're talking here not learning from the intellectual scape, but more from the emotional and love scape, because we actually need to foster the capacity to build empathy not only with people, but empathy with all living, all life forms that are surrounding us. So deep connections are critical. The second thing is, after we're deeply connected, how do we awaken our capacity to sense? Our capacity to awaken our naturalist spirit, that which enable us to see the visible and the invisible. So not only learning what's around us, but being able to understand and identify patterns and energy relationships, because this is the thread that actually generates, the capacity to be in right relation. And last but not least, after we're deeply reconnected and we learn how to sense and awaken our naturalist spirit, how do we start acting for regeneration and becoming part of a system in which we not act towards the system, but act within the system as part of the system and become a regenerative actor in this living system that is so beautiful and magical. So this is the approach we have been bringing to learning for sustainability, and especially in children, we think we need to really focus on generating these deep connections and awakening them so they can act in synchronicity and in right relationship with our planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luis. This is not time. It would have been time to hear from Xavier Michael, but unfortunately he has problem to connect. So I take just 1 minute to share his stories just as an appetizer, and I hope that we will have the opportunity to invite him in another session of the circle. He has done exactly the opposite as Luis. As Luis was saying, we need to go in both, works in both directions, bring the school to nature and bring nature to school. Well, he's been working on the second one, and he has created a movement with 1 million kids in Nigeria so that they would pledge for introducing sustainability courses in education, and they win. So, I mean, that's just the appetizer. Hopefully we'll be there in another session and we can ask him how he did this, because that's quite amazing. Carlos, if you want to introduce our next guest.
Yes, I'm very happy to introduce Samantha Supia, who will speak to us from Manila in the Philippines. She's from Singapore. I would say keen on design and co-creation, in particular in urban spaces, but actually very active in weaving stories, threads, and networks of people across what is called the global south. I'm not a fan of that expression, but to make it clear, it's across Asia, and particularly Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America. So Samantha, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carlos. I start by introducing myself from a different angle. My name is Samantha Supaya. I am a product of the British Empire in Southeast Asia. I was born into a westernized, colonized nation that celebrates to this day the arrival of the British. That would be the surprisingly oppressive city-state of Singapore, one of the world's most unequal and unsustainable places, also surprising to many. I was born to a Chinese mother and an Indian father, housed and fed in a loveless, rootless, privileged, capitalist Asian society. I studied, worked, and lived in Scotland, England, and Sweden as a sustainability consultant in the world of, as Carlos mentioned, building and urban design. I returned to Southeast Asia in early 2020 after 12 years away. I'm trying to find a place I can call home, somewhere on this deeply colonized, economically troubled, infinitely biodiverse tropical subcontinent. I often speak of the various layers of lostness I exist within as a millennial with zero assets in this era of late-stage capitalism, and also as a human who chooses to remain alive, to witness the Capitolicene's global environmental collapse. Late last year, I started a project together with a few amazing women of different generations in Brazil, South Africa, India, and the Philippines. That project is called Possible Futures, which is a space for dialogue for the emergence of regenerative narratives for the global South's complex, diverse contexts and cultures. When we talk about learning, we must talk about cultural evolution and how we come to hold the worldviews that we currently hold. When we talk about sustainability, we must recognize how and when we became unsustainable, and how we come to hold the eco-fascist ideas on sustainable development our so-called global institutions insist on perpetuating today. It started with the Europeans decimating each other's indigeneity by destroying the feminine in their cultures. They then began to use seafaring and military technology, which they stole from other cultures, for the conquering of others. Raphael Lemkin was the Jewish-Polish lawyer who coined the word genocide in the early 1940s. He was the one who initiated the Genocide Convention. He said that colonization was in itself intrinsically genocidal. He saw the genocide of indigenous peoples as a two-stage process: one, destroy indigenous ways of life, and two, impose colonizers' way of life. He also uses the term ethnocide to refer to this as a cultural genocide. This is why we have terms such as the Global South and the Global North. The Global South's shared history is one of genocide and slavery by the Global North. To explain what I mean by this, in the Americas, indigenous peoples north and south were displaced, died of disease, and were killed by Europeans through slavery, rape, and war. Over 200 years of European invasions, the population of indigenous Americans declined 95%. That is a genocide of 130 million people. Those 130 million people do not have descendants today. By sheer chance of germs and disease, the richest of the Americas funded European world domination. It allowed for the Industrial Revolution and for Europeans to continue that domination in Africa and in Asia, although the latter was a little bit more expensive. It also fueled what the Europeans call their Enlightenment, hailed, according to Wikipedia, as the foundation of modern Western political and intellectual culture. This is, of course, one arising from colonial hegemony. So, welcome to modernity. This is what we refer to in Possible Futures as the parasitic one world, a global hegemony that seeks to invalidate and exterminate other worlds. This one world is described in a research article by John Law in 2015 entitled "What's Wrong with a One World World?" And I'm going to put it right now here in the chat along with other references that I will now explain. This one world was boosted by 2 world wars, giving birth to the Great Acceleration, the dramatic, continuous, and roughly simultaneous surge in growth rate across a large range of measures of human activity, often indicated as starting in the 1950s and going strong today, thanks to influences such as the United Nations and the City of London. I hope when we are talking about sustainability, we are not talking about sustaining this parasite, one world. We are a social species on a social planet. Relationality, as has already mentioned, is everything. Power, politics, and governance are embedded in the way that ecosystems, natural or human, evolve and grow. Intersectionality is about recognizing and acknowledging our unique, complex relationalities. Intersectionality is about recognizing the many worlds within us. The hegemonic power of Western civilization began with militarized colonization and continues today with an industrial, capitalist, global economy that intentionally rapes ecologies, cultures, and societies by design to transfer wealth from the global south to the global north. This is how anthropogenic climate change came about. The worlds of sustainable development and planetary regeneration today can be seen as a form of eco-fascist white supremacy. Who has power to decide what is sustainability and what is regeneration, and who is it for? If we want to talk about regenerating the planet that we have destroyed, we must first admit that we lack the collective ability to even imagine our way out of modernity. So my piece is to say that we need to forget learning. We must first discuss unlearning through decolonization. Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you, Samantha, for these provocative thoughts. I'm sure they will raise comments and questions, but they were excellent. And now I'm pleased to introduce you to Madison Mitchell, who is at the university at Penn State University. She will get graduated in a few days, but she has already been working with the Sustainability Institute and being one of the coordinators of an initiative called global youth engagement program that Penn State University and the Club of Rome are supporting. So Maddie, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Carlos. It's great to be here. So like Carlos said, my name is Maddie Mitchell, and in partnership with the Club of Rome, the Sustainability Institute at Penn State, and an incredible group of young leaders across the globe, we have been working to establish the Global Youth Engagement Program over the past few months. Youth comprise 50.5% of the global population, with the majority living in the global south. They are the most physically and emotionally vulnerable to the current and future effects of climate change and social injustices. We often see youth at the forefront of activist approaches through leading protests or petitions, but youth voices are commonly relegated to the sidelines when it comes to crafting policy, excluded by those in positions of power due to their lack of wisdom or experience. Youth have the most to lose from a future that has failed to consider their perspectives, but they also have the most to gain from being integrated in these conversations to help determine what this future should look like. Youth perspectives and lived experiences differ across cultures, religions, geographic regions, and ethnicities, yet are all connected by their age and the need for collective action to ensure a prosperous future. There is a small set of youth leaders that have gained international recognition, like Greta Thunberg, but there are tens of thousands of Gretas in the world who have not been given a platform. We need to intentionally seek out and welcome diverse participation, regardless of socioeconomic, cultural, or geographic boundaries, ensuring that we capture voices from the margins of society. Therefore, it is not enough to just include a small group of young people charged with representing their entire country or a token young person to speak on behalf of their generation in conversations that dictate their futures. Our program is rooted in the premise of radical inclusion, so every voice matters. We're not catering to just the top 1% of youth who have been given opportunities and resources. We're ultimately trying to reach the ones who are often excluded, those who are Indigenous, living in rural communities, and don't have access to continued resources and mentorship. Our theory of change for the Global Youth Engagement Program is focused around the idea that conversations build community and community builds resilience. You may be asking, well, yeah, this all sounds great, but how do you actually do that? Too often, we, the privileged, educated, quickly use our education to solve the problem. The short answer is we can't take this approach any longer. This is why we launched our listening session initiative, to give space for every youth to share their concerns for the future, their hopes and dreams, and what skills and resources they need to make effective changes in their communities. It is through this initiative that we can collectively determine a future that every youth wants to be a part of. These listening sessions provide a space for youth to not only come together and share with us, but ultimately it's a way for them to connect with others in their local and global communities. These gatherings can spark grassroots organizing at the hyper-local level. Additionally, they can allow the youth that participate to not feel so alone in these challenges. It provides a space for connection, especially in a time of a global pandemic when people feel more alone than ever. Through our listening session initiative, we aim to hear from at least 10,000 young people by October 2021, but that's really just the start of our work. As we conduct these listening sessions, we will be gathering all the contributions that youth are sharing to ultimately build a program that centers on what youth need and want while also being youth directed. After the listening sessions wrap up, youth will have access to a report that contains anonymous quotations and information that participants have shared. They can use this report to go back to their local governments or policymakers to help inform decision-making processes. Beyond this, the program that officially is launched after the listening sessions will provide a space for youth to connect. No matter where they are located, their skin color, their language, their knowledge and experience, youth will have an opportunity to connect with one another, share best practices, engage in grassroots organizing, play games, learn about other cultures, and co-create the future we want to see. As someone who is looking forward to a verdant future, the time to act is now, and it was yesterday, but it really needs to start right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. Now, Gael, I think you will introduce Anis, right?
Yeah, thanks, Carlos, and thanks, Maddie. I guess with Luis explaining how important it is to reconnect with nature, with Samantha explaining how important it is to unlearn what we have learned and to change the trajectory. And with Maddie presenting how much it is important to go for radical inclusion and focus on youth engagement, I think we have already a lot of elements of the framework of what we should build for tomorrow, and is what the art can contribute.
Thank you, Gail. Yeah, that's the question. So many amazing initiatives exist around the world, all doing incredible work and having an impact on individuals and communities. But still, it seems a very lonely world. So it feels good to be here with you and share this panel with these incredible people and organizations and reflect on how we can imagine something different when we envision today's grand challenges. I like so much the learning for sustainability circle idea. Whether we think of education, climate change, well-being, it looks like it is impossible to overcome the status quo, but this is our responsibility to reorganize systems and invent a more humane, just, and sane future. Einstein was saying that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. At the Community Arts Network, we want to challenge this and offer another lens to ask ourselves how we see the world. And this lens is through the arts, not as a decoration, something nice that you bring on top of events, reports, discussions, but really something that is fundamental and vital component of our social fabric. We're working with artists, art institutions, grassroots organizations, business leaders, youth, activists, scientists, policymakers, networks to catalyze a few partnerships for impact themes. Two that will be interesting to my fellow panelists are Art for Climate and Art for Education. Of course, very much connected. If we speak of education, the questions for us are how we explore, how we learn, how we unlearn or relearn, how we develop. So it is about the how. And we have come up to believe that the community approach is essential so that we can see the change on the ground. And this change is in the hands of the ones who are closer to the challenges. A simple place to start may be to facilitate three-way conversations between arts, science, and impact. Or rather, artists, scientists, and activators that can be from the business, government, philanthropy, or engineering, for example. Merging perspectives, way of thinking, building on the differences, cross-pollinating, and learning from one another. The concept of artfulness is not very developed yet compared to mindfulness, for example. But we think that artfulness can provide an artful way of shaping a better tomorrow. When we speak of arts for education, we mean that we want more meaningful arts in education, because art has this unique way of speaking to our hearts and minds. Arts provoke, arts reconcile, arts bring emotions and transcend boundaries. Art is fundamental for whole child development, bringing in social and emotional learning. We also mean that we want to reflect on an artful approach. A math teacher can be an artist in the way that he or she will move the students and bring them to engage with mathematics. And in this way, you don't need to be an artist to have artfulness. Everyone can be an artfulness ambassador. You and I can be. To design artfulness, the Community Arts Network is working on the Wheel of Art, a design concept tool with 4 quadrants. Arts can make us dream, see, feel, and move in uniquely powerful ways. All 4 are crucial, and they can also work as a system. And we have to start by dreaming. You have to dream before your dreams can come true. We need to dream because we need to be able to reach beyond incremental change. We need to be daring and reimagine fundamentally new realities, to reimagine tomorrow. That energy and creativity, even if it sometimes seems crazy, is the fuel and inspiration that drives the birth of radically new solutions and systems. If, in smart collaboration, science can help connect the dreams with the reality on the ground. And this way, we could partially turn our focus from what is wrong today to what may be possible tomorrow, and tap into or activate the energy of hope. And this is art's way of making impact. through the wheel of art, we hope to see flourishing artful collaborations and plant seeds into a fertile soil where organic impact will succeed. This is how we see the Learning for Sustainability circles. The Community Arts Network will bring into life these triangle conversations and the 4 quadrants of the wheel of art to create unlikely alliances, because the solution comes from all of us. And after all, we may realize that we're not so alone in this world, and that we only have to open our eyes and minds to be connected and transcend the boundaries and maximize impact together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anis, for putting the dream and the art in at the center, because that's what we have to do. We have to move on, and to move, we need emotions to move, be connected with ourselves, as you were all saying. So now maybe we can have a discussion with the audience, and I've seen some questions, but maybe Tudor, you can read us the question that because it's far in the chat now.
Yes, sure. So this is a rather long question. I'll try to rephrase it where possible. So the question is, when we look at sustainability, often in the public discourse, we talk about technology solution, electric cars, and so on. But what about culture? Because what's valuable, it's defined by culture, and it's different from one community to the other, from one society to the other. For example, there is a sentence here: being homeless in North America has the lowest carbon footprint, and wealth has the highest, but or wealthy people have the highest footprint. How do we look at culture when we discuss sustainability and our goals for this?
Quite a broad question. I think you all fit in that category with different angles. So who wants to take a first crack at it?
I cannot help saying that putting the labels culture and technology are already signs of a culture of separation, you know? And it started long ago, of course. I mean, you have this idea of 2 cultures. On one side, humanities, on the other, natural science, or science, you know, in short, and technology. And for sure, as much as we have been developing technology with a worldview of separation, and hence exclusion, and hence exploitation, we have got what we have today. So of course, we have to mobilize all human capacities, but it's not about mobilizing them in their slots, in their silos, you know. Let's have a musical interlude in our conference, for instance. That's what I call mobilizing arts as a silo. That's not what we need. We need to go beyond the silos, beyond the disciplines, putting the process of knowledge creation upside down, and mobilizing all our capacities, and of course the artistic ones, and of course the unconscious one, to produce something, and to produce technology which could help, or to use the one which exists, although I'm a bit more skeptical about that, but using and creating and designing technology which could help to nurture relationships instead of nurturing separation. And the role of culture for that is quite obvious. Gregory Bateson famously said, when asked, he was very critical of modern technologies, and he was asked, but Mr. Bateson, you must have some examples of technologies which have been good for humanity. And he answered, well, yes, I have a couple of examples: cheese and poetry. That says it all.
All right. Do you any Luis, Maddie, Samantha, Anis, do you want to add something to what Carlos just said?
Well, I would just like to add, or ask a question of what really is culture. Culture is the way we have defined our relations. So, and culture is not a fixed box. Obviously, within cultural evolution, we have concepts of scaffolding and entrenchment, which is exactly what generates, let's say, a crisis in culture, because it doesn't allow culture to keep evolving, and it encapsulates us. And it generates difference and separation, as Carlos said. So I do think that culture needs to become more fluid, and we have to take culture as it is the process of building the way we interpret the world and how we relate. And that would be really important in the next steps.
Yeah, thanks very much. I would argue, I would add just that I think the culture is about also the values and the compass that we all share, because everything is, driven by this compass. And I see the change of that compass over the last 20 years. It's amazing to have that panel with also the brilliant people and the brilliant people here, but in the chat, and everyone else and everyone that we know that are aligned on trying to change the system, because we know that the compass is not right. So in that way, the culture is already changing, and we are just here to facilitate that transition on so many different levels, as you explained, all of you, and that represent a major change. Other questions, Tudor, maybe?
Yeah, there's another one. There are a couple of them, but I'm trying to go step by step, and we have limited time. So the question is, there are so many wonderful initiatives when it comes to innovation in education. They're usually on the side of the system and maybe doing amazing work for decades, but they fail to really impact the system. And we have an educational system which was very well designed to do its work, including building, design, and infrastructure, and so on, but didn't really do much in the last decade. So the question is, how do we, or do you know any stories of system change in the public education that we can do something to really approach sustainability in that regard? So there are a lot of things on the side, but not much impact on the system itself.
Who wants to take that
So
one?
if I can just briefly make a suggestion, that this is related to essentially a lot of other things. So it's not just the education system that we're seeing these sorts of issues, right? Interventions or innovations not really making a mark or a dent on the actual system itself. And I am actually part of the way right now, currently, not at present playing, but through this documentary, which is essentially called The Princess of Yen, where it looks at the entire economic system post-war in Japan, of course, and how they manufactured a crisis in order to effect systems change. There's a lot of, obviously, moral or immoral arguments here, but they had made very specific assessments on what was the best way to be able to actually invoke systems change, and it was a crisis. So in that case, we're set because we got crisis.
So someone else has maybe a comment on that question with something that striking as successful or underway.
If I can build on what Samantha was saying just now, it's for me, it's always a question of the vision. What is the lens you're going to use? And of course, you need a good balance between the grassroots organizations and the existing systems, and you need to find something coherent. But we're mostly focusing on our own approach, which is for me the problem. If we take a polyhedric vision, then it's like a world map, and from wherever you take the problem or the challenge, then you can see a different vision. And then what we're speaking about, the global north and the global south, doesn't make any difference in this perspective, because the south will become the north and the north will become the south. And this is maybe the way that we want to engage in this world for the future.
And I can add to that there's already a quite impressive transformation that are already taking place that we could all learn from, and I think that's one of the objective of that circle. So just to name a few, the Arizona State University has decided decades ago to change and to, instead of teaching disciplines, to teach to bring the youth to the problems and see how they can cooperate to solve them. So going from disciplines to problems to fix, I think that's quite a major move. Another one which I find quite interesting is the British Columbia, where they have decided to just change the system, because they say, well, you know, we have a very good mark at PISA, we are quite good on this, that, and the other, but our kids, they are not doing well. They are not doing what we expect them to, what they are not building for the future. So they had restructured the entire education system. And so it is possible, it is actually possible. We need the vision, and then we need to move on to how we can do this, but it can enter the institution. And this is part of the role of that circle, to serve as a middle ground. That is, we see what the social entrepreneurs, the researchers, the activists are saying, and we try to connect that with the institution so that together we can actually deliver change at the right scale. Luis, you want to?
Yes, I wanted to add that part of this is also the shift towards a truly collaborative environment for learning. And a good example is an initiative we've been developing with Ubiquity University and with the University of International Cooperation in Costa Rica, where, you know, from Humanity Rising, if some of you have seen the series that was created with the pandemic by Ubiquity University, many of us from around the world just started speaking the same language. And in that process, we ideated a new master's, and we're calling it a master's in regenerative action. And it's actually very different to everything we've ever seen, because it's a master's focused at transitioning the concept of MBAs to MRAs, to regenerative action, but it's actually being built by entrepreneurs, non-formal, informal, universities, schools, and people from around the world, just collaborating in a truly deeply collaborative initiative to share a different way of creating from multiple perspectives mechanisms to transform and to move towards beyond sustainability. So I think it is possible, but we need to break the walls that separate us and that inhibit our capacity to truly collaborate. So collaboration is going to be a critical issue.
Yeah, the only other thing that will build off of Luis is it's all about people. So systems are made up of people, and any relationship is part of a system change. We need to have the capacity to sit across the table from everyone to understand, to really make that radical change. I always like to say my favorite Sustainable Development Goal from the UN is number 17, which is partnerships. And really, you need partnerships to get anything done. You need those connections with people, and that will be the greatest source of change. Thank you.
Totally. It's the only one which is not controversial.
Yes, and by the way, this is the only one which is actually not really developed. I mean, to be honest, the SDGs could be summarized in just that one, you know, because it's the only one which is crucial. But may I insist, when we talk about pluriversality of perspectives and looking at things from different lenses, particularly to reveal our blind spots. And we cannot not have blind spots, because our conscious mind is just a small part of our intelligence. So we have blind spots, and we will probably, I mean, we will always have blind spots, but at least we know we have them. There is something which is important. It is that there are still alive many worldviews in which relationships are at the center, which are built around the concept of relationships instead of the concept of separation, and they are still alive among us. So an obvious example is the African worldviews, Ubuntu, Ukama. So the relationships is at the center of their perspective, but we have to do an exercise of allowing them to be heard and to be, you know, because for the moment, we are still in a process where there is a dominant perspective, which is modernity, which on which everything, against which everything is assessed, and the performance of educational systems is still assessed against that framework. While we need a massive injection, I would say we need as much Ubuntu as modern science, and I would even say we need a massive injection of Ubuntu into the frameworks that we are using every day. And we need to allow ourselves, we need to allow everybody to learn and act by themselves. Yes, we are all authorized to think in the different ways in which we think in this journey. Because if not, you know, we could fall short of the hope that I think we are creating. If we say, well, we will listen to everybody, but in the end, let's build up a performance-driven thing, you know, that's not the point. That's not the point.
Well, there is a number of questions. I mean, they're all more exciting. So we have 3 minutes left, and we have so many interesting questions. So I think it's time to tell you what's next. I think we need some time to explore all those questions. We need some time to listen to more people, more voices, and try to see what we can do together. So what we would like to do now is to invite you, if you haven't done yet, to register for the circle so that you can attend the next edition. That's going to be this mid-June. Tudor, can you resend the link? Tudor is going to send you the link here where you can send some feedback on what happened, what you liked, what you like less, and what we can improve, but also give us your email address so that we can contact you for the next edition of the circle, and so that from there we can start to build a conversation with much more voices and see how we can get organized so that we can create some topical discussions for specific regions or specific topic, because we have covered a lot of ground, but it's still very, very not at the scale of what needs to be done. But if we have more voices, if we include many more people in the conversation, and if we join forces, then we will be at the right scale to get the right vision, to contact the right institution, and to push together so that they can change the way it matters for us as a person, for us as a collective, and for us as nature, as Luis was saying. So I think that's an important step for us to say. We have 2 more minutes. So now that I have delivered the logistic message, and I'm super happy to invite every one of you to pick a question that you would like, or to provide a statement that will fill our day even more with joy and hope. The floor is yours. Don't be shy.
Well, I give 2 words. Decay and despair is as much relevant as joy and hope in navigating crisis. Just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean we don't have to deal with it. Cheers.
Luis, Maddie, Anis, you want to say something?
Sure, I'll go. So my biggest piece of advice leaving the conversation today is talk to people, reach out, make those connections, ask questions, and really have that human connection with others. That's what's going to change the world. Thank you.
My invitation is to allow fluidity to come into your own culture. Allow yourself to become elastic, and allow yourself to start relating in a different way to everything around you. Try to identify when fear is feeding your response, and try to shift it to love, inspiring your response. And I think as we co-evolve in that synchronicity, moving towards right relationship. Thank you.
Yeah, I had a similar message as Luis, but maybe first is to recognize our own vulnerability. and ask the right questions. And then it's about building these relationships with trust, hope in the future, and the same message as Luis, love.
Carlos, you want to end the meeting?
Well, yeah, I would emphasize that again, this is an invitation. So it was just a launch, you know, launching even just 1 hour. So of course we have just, I think, would be happy if we have launched some sparks among us, you know, and the sparks will generate questions, and the questions will generate new responses and so on. This is an invitation for a crazy journey of exploration. To be clear, it's not about, the word to be used is not resilience. It's regeneration rather than resilience, you know, because to follow my metaphor, resilience is about coming back to Madrid from the jungle where I am lost, but that's not possible. So it's about transformation and really making something new emerge. This was just the start. We'll organize by mid-June another meeting with all people, individuals and organizations interested in working together in the development of this circle and the opportunities it will bring. So everybody, you will get informed about the next steps, and there will be, of course, many, because this is just the first one. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you all very much. Was a wonderful session, and we look forward for this is just the start of a journey. That's going to be very exciting. Bye, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you.